Chapter 20, Section 3, Engaging the World in an Era of Isolationism. The horrors of World War I had left many Americans yearning for a withdrawal from international affairs, a policy that became known as isolationism. Isolationist attitudes had been strong in the Senate when it had voted down the Treaty of Versailles. At heart, however, Harding, Coolidge, and Hoover were not isolationist. They recognized that foreign trade connected American farmers and business people to the rest of the world. Avoiding involvement in Europe. Isolationist feeling was strongest toward Europe. Although in his campaign Harding had favored entry into the League of Nations, upon taking office he declared, "We seek no part in directing the destinies of the old world." During his presidency, the State Department did not even open mail from the League. American distrust of the League of Nations softened with time. The United States sent delegates to several League conferences in the 1920s. Presidents Harding and Coolidge also supported U.S. membership in an international court of justice known as the World Court. Established by the League in 1921, the World Court's purpose was to settle international disputes before they turned into wars. By the time the Senate approved membership in 1926, it had attached so many reservations that the other member nations refused to approve U.S. membership. Promoting peace through disarmament. Although public opinion leaned toward isolationism, Americans also longed for world peace. President Harding responded by inviting representatives of Great Britain, France, Italy, and Japan to Washington to discuss naval disarmament, or weapons reduction. When the Washington Naval Conference opened in 1921, Secretary of State Charles Evan Hughes shocked the delegates by offering to scrap 30 U.S. warships. The other nations soon agreed to limit the size of their navies as well. Supporters of the Naval Disarmament Agreement hoped it would discourage future wars. Naysayers, however, feared that military ambitions would not be so easily contained. They were right. The Washington Naval Conference did limit the construction of large warships, but it did not affect smaller ships and submarines. Soon, Japan, Great Britain, and the United States were adding cruisers and other small ships to their fleets. Using diplomacy to outlaw war. Efforts to negotiate an end to warfare peaked in 1928, when the United States signed the Kellogg-Briand Pact. This treaty began with an agreement between the United States and France to outlaw war between their countries. Eventually, 62 nations signed the pact, which rejected war as an instrument of national policy. Americans cheered the Kellogg-Briand Pact as an important step toward world peace. "It is a thing to rejoice over," gushed the Boston Herald. More practical-minded realists sneered that this international kiss was not worth much, because it still permitted defensive wars. But the Senate approved the treaty by a vote of 85-1. Settling Europe's war debts. In addition to worrying about the next war, the Republican presidents worked to clean up debts from the last one. At the end of World War I, Great Britain and France owed U.S. lenders $11 billion. With their economies in shambles, these countries relied on reparations from Germany to make their loan payments. The German economy, however, was in even worse shape. By 1923, Germany had stopped making reparation payments. Charles Dawes, a banker who had served as Harding's budget director, came up with a solution to the debt crisis. American banks would loan money to Germany. Germany would use the money to pay reparation to Great Britain and France. Great Britain and France would then repay what they owed to American lenders. The circular flow of money in the Dawes Plan worked for a while, but it also increased the amount of money Germany owed the United States, an issue that would cause problems later. Reducing involvement in Latin America. Isolationist sentiment also had an impact on U.S. policy toward Latin America. When Harding took office in 1921, U.S. troops were stationed in Nicaragua, the Dominican Republic, and Haiti. Harding and Coolidge both tried to reduce such entanglements. In 1921, Harding settled a long dispute with Colombia over the Panama Canal. 3 years later, Coolidge withdrew troops from the Dominican Republic. Still, business ties and American investments continued to pull the United States into Latin American affairs. After withdrawing the Marines from Nicaragua in 1925, Coolidge sent them back in 1927 to counter a revolution. Hoover, however, embraced a policy of non-intervention. Immediately after his election in 1928, he embarked on a goodwill tour of Latin America. In 1930, he signaled his rejection of the Roosevelt Corollary by announcing that the United States did not have the right to intervene militarily in Latin America. Even when revolutions shook Panama, Cuba, and Honduras in 1931, Hoover did not send troops. "I have no desire," he said, "for representation of the American government abroad through our military forces."